the Grandview Hotel ballroom gleams with amber light, chandeliers throwing sparkles across the sea of round tables draped in cream-colored linens. I shift in my seat, the unfamiliar confines of my emerald dress making me painfully aware of how rarely I wear anything but practical work clothes. My fingers tug at the hemline, longing for the comfort of my NASA badge and the weight of responsibility that comes with it. At the podium, my father's voice booms over the crowd of industry veterans. 38 years, Dad's hand slaps the wooden lectern. 38 years of making American energy independence a reality. The room erupts in appreciative applause. 120 oil executives and their spouses, all gathered to celebrate Richard Parker, pioneer of domestic petroleum production. Behind him, a slideshow flickers with images of his career Triumph oil rigs silhouetted against Texas skies, handshakes with senators, family photos of hunting trips and graduation ceremonies. I notice my absence before I consciously look for it. Photo after photo scrolls by Dad with my brothers at football games, fishing trips, award ceremonies, while I remain conspicuously missing. I take a long sip of water, the cold sliding down my throat as I maintain what I hope passes for a pleasant expression. My brothers flank Dad at the podium like perfect bookends. Brandon, the eldest, stands straight-backed in his Air Force dress uniform, medals gleaming under the spotlight. Derek, only 13 months younger than Brandon but already graying at the temples, wears an expensive suit that announces his success as clearly as a billboard. Both wear identical expressions of prisons fulfilling a father's expectations. When I look back at what matters most, Dad continues, his voice softening in a way that makes my stomach tighten. It's not the barrels produced or the wells drilled, it's the legacy we leave behind. He turns, gesturing to my brothers. Brandon here? He rests a hand on my oldest brother's shoulder, following my footsteps into leadership as an Air Force officer, making his country proud. The crowd applauds as Brandon nods solemnly. And Derek? Dad continues, his other hand clasping my middle brother's shoulder, carrying on our family's energy legacy as a petroleum engineer, already making waves at Continental. More applause. I take another sip of water, longer this time. And Fiona. His eyes find me in the corner table where I sit alone, family, adjacent rather than family proper. The pause stretches just long enough to become uncomfortable. Well, she has her own passions with those computers, but not everyone fits the path I took. Uncomfortable laughter ripples through the crowd. My fingers tighten around the water glass, knuckles whitening while I keep my face carefully neutral. The woman at the next table glances at me with poorly disguised pity. The memory surfaces without warning me at 13, standing beside a homemade satellite model with silver foil panels that had taken weeks to calibrate properly. Second place ribbon pinned to my chest. Dad's hand heavy but welcome on my shoulder as the school photographer captured the moment. Richard's daughter has quite the talent, my science teacher had told him. NASA has summer programs she should consider. I remember the way Dad's hand had tensed slightly on my shoulder, his smile remaining fixed while his enthusiasm visibly cooled. That's nice, he'd said, but real careers are built on practical things. That night, I'd tucked the science fair photo into my desk drawer, where it wouldn't prompt questions about why it wasn't displayed with the football trophies and military academy acceptance letters that lined our living room shelves. The years that followed played out in predictable patterns. Me teaching myself programming languages while Dad taught my brothers to drive his prized pickup truck. Brandon's military academy acceptance letter framed and hung in the hallway. The dinner celebration when Derek received his engineering scholarship. Mom, I got accepted to MIT. Full scholarship. I'd announced one night at dinner, the letter clutched in my hand. That's nice, dear, Dad had replied without looking up. Pass the potatoes. Under the table, Mom had squeezed my hand, a small gesture of solidarity that ultimately changed nothing. Now, 23 years later, I sit in this ballroom listening to my father erase me again. The director of NASA's Data Analysis Division, leader of a multi-billion-dollar satellite project, reduced to a daughter with a computer hobby. I glance down at the small package on the table beside me, wrapped in distinctive green paper the same shade as that long-ago science fair display board. The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago with a handwritten note. Family will be seated at the head table. I debated not coming at all. But then I'd remembered the photograph, still preserved after all these years, and made a different choice. Dad wraps up his speech with another round of hearty thanks. As the crowd rises for a standing ovation, I remain seated, one hand resting on the green package, waiting for the right moment. People begin to mingle, the formal portion of the evening complete. Several industry veterans glance my way with poorly disguised curiosity. I'm the daughter Richard Parker couldn't quite fit into his narrative of success. "Your father forgot to mention your work again," Brandon's wife Allison whispers, sliding into the empty chair beside me. Her voice carries a sympathy that makes my skin prickle. "Did he?" I keep my tone light, though the muscles in my jaw tighten. I hadn't noticed. Across the room, Derek adjusts his tie, his eyes darting away when they meet mine. The silent acknowledgement of complicity hangs between us. He knows. They all know. Mom catches my gaze from where she stands near the bar. Her smile wavers, lips pressing together in that familiar apologetic look she's perfected over decades of standing by while Dad carved me out of the family portrait. The green package feels warm under my palm, as if the memory inside radiates its own heat. I rise from my chair, the decision crystallizing with each step toward the podium where Dad holds court among admirers. Conversations hush as I move through the crowd. The confidence that directs satellite launches now guides my steps across the ballroom. Somewhere behind me, a glass clinks against a table. The sound punctuates the sudden quiet. Dad turns, surprise flickering across his face as I approach. His smile falters, recalibrating to the public version he uses when uncertain. "From the daughter you never mentioned," I say, my voice carrying across the space with the same authority I use in mission control. "Enjoy your retirement." I place the small green-wrapped box in his hands. His fingers close around it automatically, confusion giving way to discomfort as recognition dawns. The particular shade of green, the same as my science fair display board from 23 years ago. "What's this?" His laugh sounds hollow. "Open it." The two words carry the weight of decades. The room watches as Dad reluctantly peels back the paper. His hands, which have signed billion-dollar oil contracts without trembling, now fumble with the small white box beneath. When he lifts the lid, his face changes. The mask of confident industry titan slips, revealing something raw and unguarded. Inside lies the science fair photograph, 13-year-old me beaming beside my satellite model, his hand resting on my shoulder. The note tucked beneath it faces him alone. "This was the last time you looked at me like I mattered. I'm done waiting for it." Mom steps closer, peering into the box. Her hand flies to her mouth when she recognizes the photograph. Brandon and Derek exchange alarmed glances from across the room, the carefully maintained family mythology cracking before witnesses. Dad clears his throat, attempting recovery. "Ah, one of Fiona's little science projects from school." His dismissive chuckle dies when it finds no echo among the onlookers. "That project led to my current position directing NASA's satellite division," I reply, the words clear and measured. No raised voice, no drama, just truth finally spoken aloud. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. A woman in a charcoal suit steps forward, eyes widening with recognition. "You're that Fiona Clark, the one leading the Sentinel program?" Her voice carries genuine respect. Dad's face drains of color as understanding breaks across it like a cold wave. The daughter he's been dismissing as playing with computers is known to his peers, respected in ways he never bothered to discover. The very same, I confirm, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Not vindication exactly, but something cleaner, the simple relief of standing in my truth. Several industry professionals drift toward me, their interest palpable. A silver-haired man who once worked alongside Dad mentions reading about my work in Scientific American. Another asks thoughtful questions about satellite deployment that I answer with practiced ease. Mom steps forward, her spine straightening in a way I've rarely witnessed. "We're very proud of Fiona's accomplishments," she announces, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Dad's smile freezes in place, the narrative he's crafted about family success visibly crumbling around him. His eyes dart between the photograph and my face, connecting past to present with painful clarity. My phone vibrates in my clutch. Discreetly, I check the screen to find a message from my NASA team. "Satellite deployment successful. Congratulations, Director Clark." I tuck the phone away, watching Dad struggle to process this new reality, one where his invisible daughter casts a shadow he can no longer ignore. The foundations of his carefully constructed world shift beneath him while mine, built without his notice or approval, stands stronger than ever. The green box sits open on the podium between us, bridging 23 years in a moment that can never be undone. At the present, the streetlights pulse rhythmically through my car windows as I drive home from Dad's retirement party. Each flash illuminates my knuckles, still white against the steering wheel. 3 hours of maintaining that pleasant professional smile has left my facial muscles aching. I park in my reserved spot, Director Clark, printed in white against the black asphalt, and walk the familiar path to my apartment. The building houses several NASA employees, drawn to its proximity to Ames Research Center. My heels click against the concrete, a staccato reminder that I've shed Richard Parker's dismissive narrative for the night. Inside, I kick off the emerald dress shoes and pad across hardwood floors that gleam under recessed lighting. My apartment tells a different story than the one my father shared tonight. Here, glass-encased awards line built-in shelves. A framed Scientific American cover featuring my satellite system hangs prominently in the entryway. The Presidential Science Medal catches light from the kitchen, its ribbon vibrant against brushed metal. All these markers of success carefully hidden from family gatherings. I pour a glass of Cabernet and walk to the wall displaying the Times article about my pioneering data analysis algorithm. Clark system revolutionizes satellite communication, the headline proclaims. Below it sits a photograph of me in mission control, directing the team that launched the prototype system 2 years ago. No family photos break the professional narrative of these walls, no Christmas portraits or vacation snapshots. Just achievement after achievement, arranged in chronological testimony to a career built without Richard Parker's approval. The wine tastes bitter. I set it down, untouched. 3 weeks pass without a word from my family. The silence doesn't surprise me. Richard Parker has never acknowledged confrontation. He simply pretends uncomfortable moments never happened. For 36 years, I've watched him rewrite family history, erasing conflicts and disappointments like incorrect calculations on a whiteboard. The envelope arrives on Wednesday, plain white, with my father's distinctive block handwriting on the front. I leave it unopened through my morning swim, through back-to-back budget meetings, through lunch with the propulsion team. By evening, it sits accusingly on my kitchen counter while I stir pasta that I won't taste. Just open it, I tell the empty room, my voice sounding foreign after a day of deliberate silence. Inside, I find the science fair photograph, 13-year-old me with awkward bangs and serious eyes, standing beside silver foil panels arranged in precise angles. Dad's hand on my shoulder, his expression showing genuine pride the only time I'd seen it directed at me. A note in his handwriting accompanies the photograph. I do remember that day. I just pretended to forget because it scared me how little you needed me. I'm sorry. My fingers trace the edges of the photo, conflicting emotions rising like tidewaters. The apology feels simultaneously insufficient and monumental. Richard Parker doesn't apologize, not to his subordinates, not to my mother, not to his children. I place the photo on my bookshelf between a textbook on algorithmic prediction modeling and my first published paper, not hidden away this time. 2 days later, Mission Control buzzes with focused energy. Technicians monitor glowing screens while systems engineers verify final calculations. The satellite we've spent 3 years developing hovers in low Earth orbit, awaiting activation. Initiate data transmission sequence. I direct, my voice steady. Fingers fly across keyboards. Someone inhales sharply as the first transmission indicators flicker green. Signal acquisition confirmed. My deputy director announces. Data packets incoming. The room erupts into cheers as information streams across primary monitors. 3 years of design, testing, calibration, and prayer culminating in this moment. The satellite system I designed will track climate patterns with unprecedented accuracy, providing crucial data for global research teams. I stand perfectly still as jubilation swirls around me. My team members exchange high fives and triumphant grins. Someone pops a bottle of non-alcoholic champagne, foam cascading onto the tile floor. My phone lights up with notifications. Congratulatory messages from the European Space Agency, from Japan's Aerospace Division, from research teams waiting for our data. The satellite works exactly as I designed it. Better, even. No one mentions that I haven't smiled. Later that evening, my team gathers at Anton's, the restaurant 2 blocks from campus where we celebrate milestones. White tablecloths and wine glasses reflect ambient lighting while conversation flows around me. These people have become my chosen family, brilliant minds who understand the value of what we've built together. To Director Clark, my deputy director Raj raises his glass, who somehow knew this would work when the rest of us were still debating the math. Glasses clink. Someone orders another round. You changed my career trajectory. Raj tells me quietly while others debate dessert options. 4 years ago, I was considering leaving research altogether. Then you handed back my proposal with those red-inked notes in the margins. I remember the moment his climate prediction algorithm showed promise beneath flawed execution. You saw potential no one else bothered to look for, he continues, including me. The contrast strikes me anew. Here, my evaluations matter. My recognition carries weight. My standards define excellence. At home, I still wait for a father to notice I've accomplished anything at all. Later that week, I practice my keynote speech for the International Space Science Conference. My living room transforms into an auditorium as I refine delivery, timing, content. The invitation arrived yesterday, recognition of our successful launch and the implications of our data collection system. My phone rings at 9:17 p.m. Brandon's name appears on the screen. Fiona. His voice sounds strained. Dad wants you to come to Sunday dinner. The invitation hovers between us like an unidentified signal. Why? I ask finally. He's been different since the party, Brandon admits. Quieter. 10 minutes later, another call beeps through. Derek's first voicemail in months follows. Hey, Fi. I should have stood up for you. All these years, I should have said something. Call me back. A text from Mom appears while I'm still processing Derek's message. Please come Sunday. We're trying to heal our family. I stand at my window, looking toward the darkened sky where my satellite orbits silently, gathering data that will change how we understand our planet. My work matters. My contributions matter. What remains uncertain is whether I need my family to acknowledge this truth that the scientific community already recognizes. Sunday dinner waits, a familiar table with unfamiliar possibilities. I don't need their validation anymore. But perhaps, on my own terms, I'm ready to accept it. On Sunday, the Parker family home rises from the suburban landscape like a museum dedicated to other people's achievements. I park my car at the curb rather than in the driveway, a small act of self-preservation that gives me an escape route. My fingers tap an anxious rhythm on the steering wheel as I survey the red brick colonial where I grew up, but never quite belonged. 3 weeks since the retirement party. 3 weeks since I placed that green box in my father's hands. 3 weeks of replaying his face as he opened it, confusion melting into recognition, then hardening into something between shame and defiance. I gather my purse and the bottle of wine I brought, wondering if I've made a terrible mistake in coming. The front door swings open before I reach it. Mom stands in the entryway, her smile too bright, hands fluttering like nervous birds. Fiona, you're here. She pulls me into a hug that feels like an apology. Come in, everyone's waiting. The foyer wall still displays the Parker family highlights reel: Brandon's Air Force commissioning ceremony, Derek's wedding, family hunting trips to East Texas. My NASA promotion photo remains conspicuously absent, though Mom had requested a copy for the wall 2 years ago. Richard, she's here, Mom calls, her voice pitching higher than normal. From the living room comes the sound of ice cubes clinking against glass, followed by my father's heavy footsteps. He appears in the hallway, stopping short when he sees me. For the first time in my memory, Richard Parker hesitates in his own home, uncertain of his welcome. The power shift is subtle but unmistakable. Fiona. He nods, the single word carrying the weight of unspoken complexity. Dad. I match his tone, neither warm nor cold. The silence expands until Brandon's wife Julia sweeps in, kissing my cheek. Thank God you're here. They've been on edge all afternoon. Her whisper carries just enough for Dad to hear. In the dining room, Brandon stands to embrace me with military precision affection by the numbers. Derek offers a half wave from where he sits, his wife Caroline making enough small talk for both of them. The conversation moves in careful circles around weather and traffic conditions, everyone avoiding the elephant occupying the center of Mom's good china. Mom serves pot roast, my childhood favorite, though I haven't eaten red meat in 8 years. I take a small portion to be polite, pushing it around my plate while the family constructs a facade of normalcy brick by fragile brick. Halfway through dinner, Dad clears his throat. The table falls silent. Your mother and I watched that PBS special. He stabs a carrot with unnecessary force. About your satellite project. I set down my fork. The Sentinel program? That's the one. He takes a sip of water. I didn't realize it was such an important thing. It maps global water resources, I reply, my voice steady. Tracks changes over time to predict future shortages. My commanding officer mentioned it at last week's briefing, Brandon interjects. I told him you were heading it up. Derek nods vigorously. I always knew you'd do something big with all those computers. The revisionist history hangs awkwardly in the air. I measure my silence, watching them rewrite our family narrative in real time. Mom refills wine glasses nobody has emptied, her eyes darting between Dad and me. The clock on the wall ticks 17 times before Dad speaks again. Look, Fiona. His voice drops, gravel over velvet. I didn't understand your work, so I pretended it wasn't important. The admission strikes like summer lightning unexpected, illuminating everything at once. Traditional jobs made sense to me. He continues. Military, oil, things I could wrap my head around. His hands spread on the tablecloth. Your computers and algorithms might as well have been magic. Mom's eyes glisten. I should have done more. When you showed us that article about your work, I just put it in my drawer instead of framing it like Brandon's commendation. We all just followed Dad's lead, Derek admits, studying his plate. It was easier. The truth stretches between us, uncomfortable but necessary. Years of dismissal laid bare on Mom's best tablecloth. Understanding isn't what I needed, I say finally. Just acknowledgement. Dad shifts in his chair, caught between pride in what I've accomplished and mourning the loss of his unchallenged narrative. Well, you certainly made that clear at the party. Richard, Mom warns. No, he's right. I fold my napkin precisely. I did make it clear, finally. We're trying here, Fi, Brandon says, using my childhood nickname like a peace offering. Are you? I ask. Or are you just uncomfortable that your script changed? Derek surprisingly meets my eyes. How does the satellite actually work? The water mapping thing, is it using infrared or something else? The question, genuine and specific, catches me off guard. Before I can answer, Mom jumps in with dessert announcements and coffee offers, her need for harmony overwhelming the fragile moment of connection. As apple pie is distributed, I place my hands flat on the table. I need to be clear about something. The room stills. I won't diminish myself anymore to make anyone comfortable, not even family. My voice doesn't waver. I've built something meaningful, and I won't pretend otherwise. Dad's jaw works silently. Brandon studies his dessert fork with sudden fascination. Derek nods slightly, the first to acknowledge the new terms. Mom reaches across the table, her fingers stopping just short of mine. We want to do better, honey. I hope so. I stand, smoothing my slacks. Thank you for dinner. I need to head Bakirli meeting tomorrow. Dad rises, formal as a business associate. Will you come again? Next month, maybe? The question holds more vulnerability than anything he's said in decades. Yes, I say, but on these terms, no more invisibility. His nod is small but decisive. Understood. I drive away neither estranged nor reconciled. the evening's conversations settling around me like new clothes not yet comfortable, but perhaps, in time, they might fit. On the conference day, the International Space Science Conference buzzes with activity around me. Thousands of scientists and engineers fill the auditorium, their conversations creating a wave of sound that crashes against the backstage walls where I stand reviewing my notes. My fingers brush over the smooth surface of my tablet, swiping through slides I've memorized weeks ago. This presentation isn't just about satellite deployment protocols or data transmission algorithms, it's about finally being seen. Director Clark? A young assistant appears at my elbow. 5 minutes until you're introduced. I nod, smoothing down my charcoal blazer, not emerald green like at Dad's retirement party. Today I wear NASA blue, a silent declaration of where I belong. My phone vibrates in my pocket, a text from Mom. We're here in the audience. Front row, center section. I stare at the message, my heart stumbling over its rhythm. We? I hadn't invited them, hadn't even mentioned the keynote address. After the Sunday dinner a month ago, we'd reached a fragile truce acknowledgement without intimacy, recognition without full reconciliation. But actual attendance at my professional events hadn't been part of the negotiation. Peering through the curtain gap, I scan the front row. There they sit, Mom and Dad, Brandon and his wife, Derek and his fiancée, taking up 6 seats directly in my sightline. Dad sits stiffly in a dark suit, hands resting on his knees, eyes forward like he's waiting for a military briefing. Mom fidgets with her program, glancing repeatedly toward the stage. Brandon maintains his officer's posture while Derek leans forward, actually reading the conference materials. My stomach knots. They've never seen me in my element before, never witnessed what I've built beyond their sight. The thought leaves me lightheaded. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the conference chair's voice booms through the speakers, our keynote speaker. Director of NASA's Data Analysis Division, the architect behind the groundbreaking Sentinel satellite system, Dr. Fiona Clark. Applause rolls through the auditorium as I step onto the stage. The lights blind me momentarily, but as my vision adjusts, I see thousands of faces, colleagues, rivals, icons in my field, all focused on me. Not as Richard Parker's daughter, but as Fiona Clark, innovator. Thank you, I say, my voice carrying clear and confident across the silent hall. Today I'm going to walk you through how we revolutionized satellite data acquisition while cutting transmission latency by 63%. The first slide appears behind me, and I step into my element. For 40 minutes, I guide the audience through technical complexities with the ease of someone who has lived and breathed this project for years. Questions come from renowned experts, and I field them with precision. Not a single hesitation or qualification in my responses, just pure, confident expertise. Halfway through, I catch Dad's expression, genuine astonishment spread across his features as he watches specialists hang on my every word. Brandon's military mask has slipped, revealing something that might be pride or surprise. Derek takes notes about my work. As I near the conclusion, I deviate slightly from my prepared remarks. Scientific advancement doesn't happen in a vacuum. I say, the screen behind me showing our satellite against the backdrop of stars. It happens despite vacuums, including the vacuum of recognition many of us have experienced. The audience grows still, sensing the shift. Many of us have walked through laboratories, conference halls, and control rooms feeling invisible. Working twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. My voice remains steady even as I feel Mom's eyes widen in recognition. But invisibility taught me something valuable. When no one is watching, you build for yourself. You set your own standards beyond what others might expect. Susan wipes at her eyes, her shoulders tight with emotion. The Sentinel project succeeded not because we sought recognition, but because we pursued excellence regardless of who might notice. And that, colleagues, is how boundaries get pushed by those willing to work in the shadows until the work itself demands the light. The final slide appears. Our satellite's first transmitted image, a high-resolution map of atmospheric carbon levels that will revolutionize climate research. Thank you for your attention, I conclude, and for seeing the work, not just the names attached to it. The applause begins before my final words fade. It builds like a wave, then crashes as the audience rises to their feet. A standing ovation washing over me, sound and movement acknowledging years of invisible work. Through the blur of faces, I find my family all standing, all clapping. Dad's eyes glisten with what might be tears. Mom openly weeps. Brandon's applause is military precise, while Derek's is enthusiastic, almost frantic. I take a small bow, professional and contained, even as something shifts inside me, recognition no longer sought but finally, unexpectedly received. Afterward, backstage, they find me. Dad approaches first, his usual commanding presence diminished by uncertainty. "Fiona?" he says, voice rough. "I was wrong not to see you." The words come slowly, painfully extracted from decades of certainty. "What you've built I never understood." Mom embraces me, her perfume familiar but her respect entirely new. "You were magnificent," she whispers. Brandon extends his hand formally, then shakes his head and pulls me into a brief hug. "I never understood what you built," he admits. "I do now." Derek surprises me most, pulling out his notes. "The compression algorithm you mentioned, does it also apply to geological survey data? Because I've been working on a project that might benefit from..." For the first time in my memory, he's asking about my work, actually asking with genuine interest rather than polite obligation. That evening, we gather at a restaurant near the conference center. The conversation flows differently than any family dinner in my memory. Dad asks specific questions about satellite trajectories. Mom shares how she's been reading popular science articles to understand my field better. The brothers engage with my responses instead of waiting for their turn to speak. I accept their efforts while maintaining the boundaries I've worked so hard to establish. This isn't forgiveness, not yet, but it might be the beginning of something new. Something built on seeing rather than overlooking, on recognition rather than erasure. As we finish dessert, Dad clears his throat. "We're having brunch tomorrow before heading back to Houston. Would you join us?" I consider the invitation, measuring it against years of absence. "I have a team meeting at 10, I reply, "but I could meet you at 11:30. His nod acknowledges both the acceptance and the limitation. The invisible daughter has become visible on her own terms, not by shrinking to fit their frame, but by building one large enough that they finally had to look up and see her. In 6 months, I will build it even more. Now, the morning sun streams through my office window at NASA Ames, painting golden rectangles across my desk. 6 months since the conference, and the world has shifted on its axis, or perhaps I have. I straighten the science fair photo that now occupies prime real estate beside my computer monitor. 13-year-old me stands beside that silver-foiled satellite model, Dad's hand on my shoulder. No longer hidden in a drawer, but displayed where I see it daily. Not as a reminder of what I lacked, but of how far I've traveled. My phone buzzes, a text from Mom. "Found an article about satellite imagery I actually understood, bringing it to dinner Sunday." I smile, typing back, "Save it for after dessert. Derek fell asleep last time." "Mom's taking online courses about space technology so I can brag about you properly," she'd explained. The monthly family dinners, now hosted at my apartment rather than the Parker family homestead, have evolved from awkward obligations to something approaching comfortable. My assistant knocks lightly. "Director Clark? Your 9 o'clock is waiting. The International Collaboration Team." I nod, gathering my materials. The promotion came through last month, Director of International Space Initiatives. My satellite system's success had opened doors previously bolted shut. "And your father called," she adds. "Something about a contact at Lockheed Martin who wants to discuss your mentorship program." That's new, Dad sharing industry connections. The mentorship program for girls in STEM started as personal redemption, something to ensure other young scientists wouldn't feel as invisible as I once did. Dad attended the launch event with obvious reluctance, uncomfortable among the teenage girls with their circuit boards and code. Then Amelia happened, 12 years old with wiry red hair and a passion for satellite communication. She cornered Dad, peppering him with questions about frequency bands. Something in her earnestness cracked his veneer. "She reminded me of you," he admitted later that night. Same look in her eyes when she talked about signal processing. Now he volunteers monthly, helping the girls understand the business side of aerospace. His first genuine gift tone that didn't require me to become someone else to receive it. My family photo from the conference sits beside the science fair image, all of us with genuine smiles. Not perfect, but authentic. The comfortable distance we've established feels right, close enough for truth, far enough for independence. Last week's team celebration still lingers in my mind. My NASA colleagues mingling with my family in my apartment, worlds colliding without catastrophe. Dad observing from the kitchen as I walked a junior engineer through a complex problem, pride visible in his eyes not because I was his, but because of who I'd become. He found me on the balcony later, nursing a glass of wine beneath the night sky. "You built your own mountain instead of climbing mine," he said quietly. I watched a satellite, possibly one of mine, trace its path across the stars. And the view is better than I imagined. The news about the Mars mission selection came yesterday. My system will map the red planet's surface with unprecedented detail. The family dinner celebrating this milestone focused, for once, on my achievement without side conversations about Brandon's promotion or Derek's new project. I heard Dad telling a colleague at the celebration, "My daughter runs the space program that will map Mars." Simple words, simply stated, no qualifiers or dismissals. I smiled, not because I needed his pride anymore, but because it was welcome all the same. Sometimes you don't need to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it. Write your own story even if no one claps.